India is a land of staggering contrasts. Right next to Mumbai's soaring skyscrapers, a parallel world coexists, defined by overwhelming density and a raw struggle for survival. Today, we're diving deep into the heart of India's largest, most heavily strained slums. This isn't just a story of hardship. It's a close look at an entire system of survival functioning right beside hypermodern financial hubs. Why do millions still flood into these packed settlements, despite the incredibly harsh conditions? Let's find out. If you're ready to see a side of India postcards never show, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and comment below your thoughts on these incredible urban contrasts. Let's get started. Dharavi, the most famous slum in Asia. Let us begin our journey in the absolute beating heart of Mumbai, at a specific geographic coordinates that has become a global symbol of urban juxtaposition and profound socioeconomic divide, Dharavi. Spanning just over 500 acres of prime, highly contested real estate land, this labyrinthine pocket of informal housing is home to an estimated 1 million people, making it indisputably one of the most densely populated patches of land on the entire planet. To put this mind-boggling scale into an understandable perspective, imagine a population size nearly equal to the entire city of San Francisco, packed tightly into a geographic area smaller than New York's Central Park. For international travelers, urban planners, and economic analysts alike, Dharavi represents the ultimate undeniable visual contrast of modern rising India. On one side of the roaring multi-lane highway, shiny glass corporate towers and luxury multi-million-dollar apartments pierce the heavily polluted sky. On the other, a low-slung, seemingly endless sea of corrugated tin roofs and blue plastic tarpaulins stretches as far as the human eye can see. Originally a tiny, isolated village of fishermen surrounded by mangrove swamps in the 19th century, Dharavi grew exponential as waves of penniless migrants from across rural India arrived in search of factory work. Today, it stands as a bustling, independent city within a city, challenging the conventional Western definitions of poverty and urban development, while serving as a stark, daily reminder of the massive widening wealth gap in India's financial capital. Life in alleys less than 1 meter wide. Step off the main chaotic road, cross the threshold of development, and follow us into the labyrinthine, suffocating interior of Mumbai's informal settlements, where the very concept of personal space is completely shattered and redefined. Here, the narrow, winding passages are so tightly squeezed that two average adults can barely pass each other without turning sideways, holding their breath and pressing their backs against the rough walls. Houses are built out of whatever materials are available: raw concrete, blocks, salvaged scraps of wood, rusty corrugated iron, and repurposed plastic sheets, all stacked precariously 3 or 4 stories high into the air with no architectural blueprint. Because these fragile structures lean toward each other for mutual support, the makeshift rooftops meet at the top, completely blocking out the natural sunlight and leaving the narrow alleys below in a state of perpetual, shadowy, and claustrophobic twilight. Inside these cramped, dark corridors, daily life unfolds completely in the public eye without any privacy, with families of 6 to 8 people often sharing a single 10 by 10 foot multi-purpose room for sleeping, cooking, and working. The muddy alley naturally becomes an extension of the household living room. Walking through, you will see residents washing metallic dishes on the very doorstep, women chopping fresh vegetables under the dim glow of a single fluorescent bulb, and neighbors shouting friendly greetings over the constant, loud hum of industrial electric fans. Ventilation is virtually non-existent, and the heavy, humid air carries a pungent mix of moisture, strong spices, sweat, and motor exhaust. It is a suffocating environment by Western standards, yet it operates with a beautifully synchronized human rhythm, where every single square inch is utilized for deep survival, resilience, and human connection. Where waste becomes a livelihood. Now, let us examine an absolutely astonishing multi-layered economic engine hidden deep within the smoky underbelly of Dharavi, a massive, highly organized informal recycling industry that systematically turns the metropolis's discarded waste into a multi-million-dollar survival mechanism for the urban poor. While wealthy Western cities continuously struggle with complex green initiatives, expensive municipal recycling programs, and overflowing landfills, the resilient residents here have perfected the delicate art of material transformation, manually processing an estimated 80% of Mumbai's staggering daily output of solid waste. Every single day without fail, thousands of tons of discarded plastic bottles, scrap metal, broken glass, cardboard, and obsolete electronics are ferried into the heart of the slum on old, sputtering diesel trucks, overloaded tricycles, and strained wooden handcarts. If you look closely at the dark, dust-choked, and unventilated workshops lining the active railway tracks, you will witness an unbelievable sight. Inside, hundreds of bare-handed workers sort through towering mountains of garbage with incredible machine-like speed, categorizing plastic by its specific chemical polymer type, density, and color before crushing it into reusable, marketable pellets. This vast informal economy is estimated to generate well over $1 billion in annual revenue and directly employs tens of thousands of marginalized people who would otherwise have absolutely no source of income. It is, however, a grueling, deeply toxic, and hazardous environment where laborers work long shifts without a single piece of protective gear, constantly inhaling the poisonous fumes from melted plastics and chemical residues. Yet, amidst the pervasive grime, the dangerous air quality, and the hazardous structural conditions, this industrial subculture provides a vital civic service, single-handedly keeping India's largest metropolis from being completely buried under the weight of its own consumer trash. Dark waters and overloaded sanitation systems. We now turn our focus toward one of the most critical, life-threatening structural challenges facing these exploding megacity settlements: the complete systemic breakdown of basic public sanitation and municipal infrastructure. In these hyper-high-density neighborhoods, the city's infrastructure has failed catastrophically to keep pace with the massive, unyielding influx of people migrating from rural provinces. Open drainage channels thick with a black, stagnant, and bubbling sludge composed of industrial chemical effluents and raw domestic waste cut directly past the front steps of residential homes and public walkways. The heavy air here carries a sharp, metallic, and nauseating odor, a constant, suffocating reminder of the immense environmental pressure and ecological damage building beneath the crowded streets. The statistical reality surrounding the lack of public facilities is truly staggering and horrifying. In many of the most densely packed blocks, a single public toilet cubicle must serve well over 1,000 residents, leading to massive, tense queues that stretch down the alleys every single morning long before the grueling workday begins. During the annual summer monsoon season, this incredibly fragile equilibrium shatters completely. Heavy, relentless downpours quickly overwhelm the shallow, uncovered, and trash-choked drains, causing a toxic, highly infectious mixture of polluted rainwater and untreated human sewage to back up directly into the ground floor living rooms. Families are forced into a desperate survival mode, elevating their meager belongings, beds, and cooking stoves on stacks of bricks while being forced to wade through knee-deep, contaminated water just to step outside their homes. This waterlogged, highly toxic environment creates a permanent, ideal breeding ground for millions of mosquitoes and deadly waterborne pathogens, making dangerous illnesses like dengue fever, typhoid, and cholera an ongoing, terrifying, everyday threat to the health of the entire community. Children growing up amidst the slums. Despite these incredibly harsh structural conditions and the daily battle against the elements, life continues to find a creative way forward, and nowhere is this beautiful truth more evident than in the thousands of bright-eyed children who call these narrow alleys home. Growing up in a hyper-congested space where multiple generations must sleep, cook, clean, and live together inside a single tiny room means that the very concept of a private childhood is non-existent. Instead, childhood is experienced collectively and vibrantly out in the open. It is an incredibly common, heartwarming sight to see toddlers playing games of tag or cricket in the narrow passages, dodging busy delivery men, speeding motorbikes, and stray animals with a remarkable instinctive agility, their joyful laughter cutting through the heavy industrial hum of the nearby recycling workshops and sweatshops. However, the everyday reality for these children is a delicate, often heartbreaking balancing act between immediate economic survival and future hope. From a very young age, many are expected to actively contribute to the fragile household economy, helping their exhausted parents sort recyclable materials, pack manufactured leather goods, or mind their younger siblings while the adults work exhausting double shifts in the factories. Yet, if you step into the heart of the slums during the early afternoon, you will see a beautiful, deeply inspiring counter-narrative to this poverty. Hundreds of children emerging from the dark alleys dressed in impeccably clean, crisp, and neatly pressed school uniforms, carrying heavy backpacks through the muddy, polluted lanes. Parents living here understand completely that a solid education is the single golden ticket out of this generational cycle of poverty. They willingly sacrifice basic personal comforts, healthcare, and food variety to pay for private tutoring or community-run schools, viewing every single book opened by their children as a vital, necessary step toward a completely different, dignified life in the modern world. The markets that never sleep. To truly capture the vibrant, electric, and utterly exhausting energy of these informal districts, one must experience the vast markets that operate on a relentless 24-hour continuous loop. In this environment, business never stops for a single second, and every single square foot of available space is aggressively converted into a high-yield retail asset or a frantic manufacturing hub. Long before the first rays of dawn break over the horizon, the narrow, unpaved lanes clogged to the brim with exhausted vendors pushing heavy wooden carts loaded with fresh marigolds, pungent ginger, and bright green chilies brought in from the rural outskirts. By midday, these paths transform into a chaotic, deafening symphony of urban commerce. where wholesale leather goods, hand-rolled clay pottery, intricate textiles, and high-quality garments are traded directly from the very doorsteps of the cramped workshops where they were created just hours before. As night falls over the massive expanses of Mumbai and Delhi, the neon signs of small, makeshift food stalls flicker to life, casting a warm, amber glow over the cracked asphalt. Street food vendors fry piping hot samosas in massive cauldrons of boiling oil and brew rich, heavily spiced chai for an endless stream of workers finishing their late-night shifts in the surrounding garment and recycling factories. The sheer density of the population creates an incredibly efficient, self-contained microeconomy where absolutely nothing goes to waste. Every byproduct is repurposed and no potential customer is ever ignored. It is an intense, overwhelming sensory overload, the rhythmic clanging of metal workers, the passionate shouting of competitive sellers, and the heavy, pungent smell of frying spices mixed with motor oil and diesel exhaust. This relentless, unyielding hustle demonstrates beautifully that these settlements are not passive, depressing zones of despair, but rather hyperactive, vital commercial hives that actively drive the informal economy of the entire nation. When the monsoon season turns into a nightmare, let us now witness the harrowing period when nature itself tests the endurance, faith, and survival instincts of these vulnerable communities to the absolute limit, the catastrophic arrival of the annual monsoon. Between the months of June and September, the skies over the Indian subcontinent open up completely, delivering torrential, unyielding downpours that dump months' worth of rainfall in just a matter of terrifying hours. In a planned, modern city with proper infrastructure, this heavy rain is merely a seasonal inconvenience or a traffic delay. Inside the overburdened, neglected slums, it quickly escalates into a full-scale, devastating humanitarian crisis. Within minutes of a heavy storm hitting the area, the narrow, winding lanes and unpaved dirt roads transform into rushing, waist-deep rivers of dark, highly contaminated water. As the floods rise rapidly, the true, naked vulnerability of the informal infrastructure is laid bare for all to see. Completely clogged by tons of uncollected plastic waste and heavy industrial debris, the makeshift drainage networks fail instantly, forcing a toxic, foul-smelling mixture of urban chemical runoff and raw, untreated sewage to back up directly into the ground floor living rooms of thousands of families. Residents must act with frantic speed, scrambling together to move their refrigerators, valuable bedding, electrical items, and heavy cooking gas cylinders onto elevated wooden planks or precarious upper ledges. The economic toll of these floods is absolutely devastating, as small home-based tailoring shops and recycling units see their raw materials, electronics, and hard work ruined in an instant. Yet, what is most striking and deeply moving about this crisis is the stoic, silent resignation of the people. Year after year, without fail or complaint, they navigate this watery chaos, cleaning out the thick black mud once the rain finally stops, and rebuilding their fragile lives from scratch with a quiet, repetitive resilience that is both profoundly inspiring and deeply heartbreaking. Watch. The most dangerous jobs for survival. To keep a leaking roof over their heads and a meager amount of food on the family table, the residents of these settlements routinely take on some of the most hazardous, toxic, and physically punishing jobs imaginable on Earth. Operating entirely without formal employment contracts, health insurance, minimum wage protections, or social safety nets, daily survival means willingly stepping into informal, unregulated industries where safety codes are completely non-existent. We can see this vividly in the thousands of small, unventilated sweatshops buried deep in the alleys, where workers sit hunched over heavy, dangerous machinery for 12 to 14 hours a day, constantly inhaling toxic chemical fumes from leather dyes, strong metal polishes, and melting plastics without wearing a single piece of protective gear or face masks. Perhaps the most grueling and heartbreaking of these occupations is manual waste scavenging and toxic scrap sorting. Men, women, and even elderly grandmothers spend their entire days breaking down discarded electronic waste, exposing their bare hands and respiratory systems to lethal amounts of lead, mercury, and sharp broken glass. Competition for these low-wage, high-risk roles is incredibly fierce, driven by the sheer volume of desperate people arriving daily in the city, all hungry for a basic daily wage. A laborer might work from the earliest hours of dawn until late into the dark night just to earn a few hundred rupees, an amount that is barely enough to cover basic rice and lentil rations for their dependent family. It is a relentless, exhausting, and unforgiving hustle where human health, longevity, and physical well-being are continuously tragically traded for immediate day-to-day survival in a hyper-competitive, merciless urban jungle. The contrast just a few streets away. Now let us step back, elevate our perspective, and look at the bigger geographical picture, because perhaps the most shocking, deeply unsettling aspect of India's urban slums is not just their harsh internal conditions, but their immediate, direct proximity to extreme, unimaginable wealth. In a hyper-metropolis like Mumbai, the dividing line between ultra-luxury and severe poverty is not a geographic border or separate district. It is often just a single concrete security wall, a narrow alleyway, or a 4-lane highway. You can stand on a manicured, high-rise balcony in one of the most expensive residential neighborhoods in the entire world, looking down directly into a sprawling, chaotic sea of blue plastic tarps and corrugated metal roofs that make up the adjacent informal settlement. This extreme, unfiltered juxtaposition creates a surreal, almost dystopian urban landscape where two completely different worlds rely heavily and intimately on each other just to function from day to day. The billionaires, Bollywood superstars, and wealthy corporate executives living in the gleaming glass towers depend entirely on the vast, low-wage army of maids, cooks, drivers, security guards, and delivery workers who commute daily from the narrow, dark alleys right across the street. Conversely, the delicate slum economy thrives on the continuous demand for services and goods generated by these wealthy districts. It is a stark, undeniable visual representation of modern economic disparity, where the highest highs and the lowest lows of humanity live side by side, sharing the exact same air and geographic space, yet separated by a vast, invisible, and almost unbridgeable social and economic chasm. Slums along polluted rivers. Let us now shift our gaze away from the financial capital of Mumbai and journey north toward New Delhi, along with other rapidly growing northern industrial metropolises. Here we encounter a different but equally severe, heartbreaking manifestation of informal urban growth. The sprawling, endless slums built directly along the unstable edges of highly toxic rivers and industrial drainage canals. For miles on end, vast communities of makeshift shelters stretch along watercourses like the Yamuna River, a historic body of water that has been officially declared ecologically dead due to the massive, unyielding volume of untreated sewage, heavy metals, and chemical runoff poured into it daily by the surrounding megacity. The environmental and health conditions in these waterfront settlements are extraordinarily harsh and hazardous. The water running through these canals is often a thick, bubbling black sludge or completely covered in a mountain of toxic white industrial foam that smells strongly of sulfur, ammonia, and decay. Lacking any access to municipal water grids or clean sanitation, residents are forced to live in an environment where the very air they breathe is heavy with airborne pollutants. In the scorching dry season, toxic chemical dust blows directly into their homes and food. During the fierce monsoons, the contaminated, infectious river water washes directly through their doorsteps. Despite these severe, documented health hazards, the population density in these zones continues to climb rapidly every single month. With absolutely no affordable housing available anywhere else in the massive city, thousands of penniless new arrivals have no choice but to stake their claim on these hazardous, unclaimed riverbanks, trading their long-term health and lifespan for a tiny, fragile, and immediate foothold in the urban economy. Why do millions still flock to the slums? This brings us directly to a fundamental burning question that every outsider, tourist, and sociologist ask when witnessing these intense conditions. Why do millions of people continue to willingly leave their hometowns and migrate into these overcrowded, heavily strained, and hazardous urban environments? To find the true nuanced answer, we have to look far away from the city, toward the struggling, stagnant rural heartlands of India. For a poor, marginalized farmer in states like Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, or rural Maharashtra, life is entirely dependent on the unpredictable, increasingly volatile monsoon rains and wildly fluctuating agricultural market prices. A single failed crop, an insect infestation, or an unexpected family medical emergency can instantly plunge an entire rural household into a generational cycle of inescapable, crushing debt. In comparison, despite its deep structural flaws, lack of sanitation, and harsh living conditions, the big city represents a powerful, shining beacon of economic hope and upward mobility, however small that hope might be. The metropolis offers a dynamic, endlessly absorbing informal job market where an unskilled migrant can instantly find daily work as a construction laborer, a rickshaw puller, a domestic worker, or a factory hand. Even if they have to live in a dark, windowless room in a cramped alley, they can earn a steady, predictable cash income that allows them to send vital money back home to pay for a sister's wedding, a parent's life-saving medicine, or a child's schooling. The slum is not a destination chosen out of desire or ignorance. It is a strategic, calculating compromise. It is a harsh launching pad where people willingly endure the ultimate physical hardships today in the profound, burning hope that their children might secure a stable, comfortable, and educated place in India's emerging middle class tomorrow. The truth behind India's largest slums. As we reach the final, reflective chapter of our deep urban exploration, we must consciously look beyond the thick layers of grime, the overflowing drains, and the sensationalized media headlines to understand the deeper, beautifully complex truth of India's largest slums. If you only look at these vibrant places through the simplistic lens of poverty, misery, and pity, you miss the most important, inspiring part of the human story. These settlements are not chaotic, lawless black holes of despair. They are in reality highly organized, self-sustaining and self-policing communities that possess an absolutely mind-boggling level of human resilience, mechanical ingenuity, and deep social cohesion. Within these informal neighborhoods, you will find a complete, sophisticated social ecosystem functioning smoothly and peacefully without heavy government intervention or police presence. There is a profound, beautiful sense of communal trust where neighbors look out for each other's safety, watch each other's children like their own, and joyfully celebrate diverse religious festivals together as one massive extended family. Crime rates inside places like Dharavi are remarkably and famously low compared to many Western inner-city neighborhoods. What we are witnessing here is a parallel world that showcases the absolute outer limits of human adaptability and spirit. It is a place where millions of hardworking people take the absolute harshest conditions life can throw at them and through sheer willpower, relentless hard labor, and an unbreakable community spirit, turn a crowded, neglected urban landscape into a vibrant, beating, and highly productive engine of survival. Our deep dive into the heart of India's most intense urban settlements leaves us with a powerful, lingering perspective on the human condition. These high-density neighborhoods serve as a living testament to the massive structural challenges brought about by rapid global urbanization, yet they also shine a bright light on the unbreakable strength of the human spirit. They force us to re-examine our definitions of wealth, community, and success. As India continues its rapid march toward becoming a global superpower, the true measure of its progress will not just be found in the height of its luxury skyscrapers, but in how it uplifts, integrates, and honors the millions of hardworking individuals who keep the heart of its great cities beating from inside the crowded alleys. Thank you for joining us on this immersive journey. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and always look deeper beneath the surface of the world around you.